Imagine this. You're walking in the desert. The year is... Actually, you don't know what the year is. That's just not a thing people know anymore. But out here in the sand dunes, you stumble across something strange. Something ominous. A sea of sculptures. Monumental black spikes piercing up from the ground. Carved into the spikes you see confusing markings. Are these lost languages, you wonder? There's no way for you to know. The lines simply mean nothing to you. There are also pictograms engraved on the spikes.
One image shows a man lying down. Then the next shows him reaching into a box.
It's confusing. What's it trying to tell you? Perhaps a great treasure is buried here, you think, with building excitement. You walk on. In the centre of the black spikes, you find a monolith which houses a chamber, and you decide this must be the place to start digging. Over the next few years, stories of the strange place you found in the desert spread. People travel from far away to see it, to help you unearth its secrets. Folk bring digging machines. It takes decades, but steadily you bore into the ground. And what you find is unbelievable. A system of tunnels leading further and further underground. More ancient messages are uncovered the further you go, but these markings, like all the others, remain an enigma to you. When the metal containers are found deep in the heart of the structure, as the person who first discovered this place, you're given the honour of prying the first one open. Your once strong hands have been weakened by years of hard work under the desert sun, but still, you manage to heave open the treasure box. All you find is dirty-looking glass encased in weird-looking rock. But it will only take a few years for you and everyone around you to learn that something else was released when the barrel was opened. An invisible and insidious evil. You and all the others who came here die in agony, cursed by what you found deep in the darkness. The ancestors did not bury treasure here. They buried evil. Now, would you believe me if I said that this scenario is not particularly fantastical? It's barely even science fiction. It is in fact a possible future occurrence that scientists today are already trying very hard to stop happening. Humans have created a substance that for the next 10,000 years will be very dangerous, nuclear waste, and currently the plan to get rid of it is to bury it and hope it's not disturbed until the radioactivity is decayed to safe levels. And it's agreed in scientific circles that it's our responsibility to let the people of the future know we've done this, so they don't accidentally unearth what should stay buried. But in 10,000 years, languages will have changed, and symbols will mean different things to what they mean today. Who knows what knowledge may be lost in that time? So how on earth do we warn our descendants? Well, fortunately, a lot of thought has already been put into this. There have been some absolutely bizarre proposed solutions. So let's have a look at them. In 1896, Henri Becquerel discovered that uranium salts fogged photographic plates. This experiment set off quite an incredible whirlwind, and in 58 years from that moment, thanks to the work of many brilliant scientists, in 1954, Soviet scientists opened Obninsk, the first nuclear power plant to supply electricity to a grid. So in a relatively short period of time, humans went from discovering an amazing source of energy to harnessing it. But of course, there is a cost. Well, firstly, yes, humans of course managed to turn this into a devastating weapon. But also, the byproduct for harnessing nuclear power was nuclear waste, which when humans get too close to it can cause radiation sickness, cancer, genetic defects, and ultimately death. But the good thing is scientists realize that with diligence and care, the risks can be mitigated. You just need to keep the waste away from people. As mentioned, it was decided that the waste should be buried deep underground. And as long as its tomb is left undisturbed, scientists were confident it would pose no threat. And the responsibility, of course, falls on us today as the people burying the waste to let the people of the future know we've done that. But, as mentioned at the start, that brought a new question. How would we let future generations know what we've done? How do you send a message 10,000 years in the future? At first it might seem like an easy task. We'll tell everyone, hey, there's nuclear waste buried here, no one dig it up. Put some signs up that say the same thing and job done. But the thing is, that is not enough. In a letter Carl Sagan wrote on this topic, Several half-lives of the longest-lived radioisotopes in question constitute a time period longer than recorded human history. No one knows what changes that span of time will bring. Societal institutions, artistic conventions, written and spoken language, scientific knowledge, and even the dedication to reason and truth might, for all we know, change drastically. Furthermore, the polymath, semiotician, and linguist Thomas Seviuk writes on this subject, "The generalization that all natural languages, and by extension all human communication systems, change over time is widely accepted. Semiotic systems, moreover, tend to undergo progressive changes so that their significant functions become unreliable, e.g. Middle English to us, or even totally incomprehensible, e.g. Old English to us, when future generations attempt to comprehend them. It follows that no fail-safe method of communication can be envisaged 10,000 years ahead." Think about it like this. If you stumbled across this message written in Rongo-Rongo, would you know what it meant? Well, the answer is no, as Rongo-Rongo is an undeciphered script discovered on items on Easter Island, made by the Rapa Nui people. There's no one alive who can tell you what these symbols mean. It's not known how old exactly Rongo-Rongo is, but it's believed to have emerged no earlier than the 13th century. And in less than 1,000 years, the meaning of these symbols has been lost. Probably forever. So in 10,000 years, the idea of someone coming across these symbols and knowing what they mean seems quite unlikely. This writing is Old English, the ancestor of the language I'm speaking to you in right now. It was written about 1,000 years ago, and 1,000 years later, I have no idea what it says. But I think these people are perhaps playing an instrument. So if I at least understand that, maybe an image is the way to go. The question then becomes, what image? As pointed out by Thomas Seviuk, there are stick figures, cartoons, sketches, paintings, photographs, and a host of other possibilities for pictorial representation, with varying degrees of accuracy. But as he also points out, the meaning of such images relies heavily on the perception of the person viewing them. As he says, for example, in the crowd scene in Figure 3, are the people fighting, dancing, or engaged in some other activity? On top of this, if you're looking at a sequence of images to convey a story, then you have to take a guess in which order they will be read. Currently today on Earth, there are some cultures that read left to right and others that read right to left. How this image will be read in 10,000 years' time is a complete guess. Is this the story of a happy man who finds a box, pulls something from the box, and then collapses? Or an ill man on the ground who finds a magic box that takes the illness out of him? Some, including Carl Sagan, suggested that the skull and crossbones, a current ubiquitous symbol for poison, as the symbol to be used. But as pointed out in the Sandia Report, more on that report later, this symbol has already transcended its original meaning. They write, the lineage of the skull and crossbones, as a graphic symbol, leads back to medieval alchemists, for whom the skull represented Adam's skull, and the crossbones the cross that promised resurrection. Then, later, it becomes associated with pirates, and after that it's taken on the meaning of poison. When a symbol's meaning can so easily change over time, how can you rely on a symbol to convey a warning? This bottle of ethanol has a skull and crossbones on it to make you think of poison, so you shouldn't drink it. But this bottle of Jolly Roger's rum has the skull and crossbones on it to make you think of pirates, so feel free to drink it. Basically, when it comes down to symbols, as written in the Sandia Report, no symbol is certain to stay in use for the 10,000 year period. Future societies will probably create many of their own symbols, and symbols from our time may have their meaning changed or distorted with the passage of time. Compare how the meaning of a swastika has changed in our century, going from a positive religious symbol of India to a hated emblem of the Nazis. Basically, where this all leads to is the conclusion that you can't expect something that has an obvious meaning to you to have an obvious meaning to someone from another time and culture. If you look at ancient architecture which is still standing, from the pyramids to Stonehenge, there are tons of different theories about why these structures were built and what message their builders were trying to convey. But we don't know for sure. And the oldest pyramid and Stonehenge were both built about 5,000 years ago, half the 10,000 years that the nuclear waste warning message needs to last. So those are all the problems. But what are the solutions? Well, there's been quite a bit of ink put on paper on the subject. Let's have a look at some of the ideas they came up with. The Human Interference Task Force. In 1984, the US Department of Energy and Bechtel Corp convened a group of experts from across various fields to look into this problem. The assembled group was called the Human Interference Task Force. They write,
Because the knowledge levels, backgrounds, and purposes of future readers are unknown, repository messages should be designed to convey varying levels of meaning, from rudimentary to complex, from general to specific. Several levels of messages are recommended, ranging from symbolic caution messages to reasonably detailed descriptions of what should be avoided. Consideration should be given to the response of the reader to the message, the desired response being one of taking caution prior to engaging in potentially disruptive activities, rather than fear of the repository site. Of particular use would be a message structured to cause future generations to take it upon themselves to protect the repository, using whatever means are most applicable to their times, and to re-encode the message to account for future language changes whenever necessary, e.g. establish a message relay system. They also mention oral transmission may be considered a potential repository message channel. They write, "There is controversy among historians and folklorists over the efficacy of oral transmission as a method for accurately conveying information over long time periods. Opinions range from folk tradition as historical fallacy to folk tradition as historical fact. But even those who dispute the accuracy of folk tradition usually agree that folklore does have some basis in fact, although it must be regarded and used with care. Oral transmission may, through a synergistic relationship with permanent messaging bearing markers and records in archives, offer an additional channel for dissemination of repository-related information. It can be expected that stories, poems, and legends will develop about the site in the same manner that oral tradition and history is associated with the Great Wall." One of the consultants on the Human Interference Task Force, Thomas Sebiuk, went into more details of this oral transmission idea in his own paper, Communication Measures to Bridge 10 Millennia. And he went a little further with it. The Atomic Priesthood. One of Sebiuk's suggestions was, to be effective, the intended messages have to be recoded and recoded again and again at relatively brief intervals. For this reason, a relay system of communication is strongly recommended with a built-in enforcement mechanism, for dramatic emphasis here dubbed an Atomic Priesthood, i.e. a commission relatively independent of future political currents, self-selective in membership using whatever devices for enforcement are at its disposal, including those of folkloristic character. He continues later, "The legend and ritual as now envisaged would be tantamount to laying a false trail, meaning that the uninitiated will be steered away from the hazardous site for reasons other than the scientific knowledge of the possibility of radiation and its implications. Essentially, the reason would be accumulated superstition to shun a certain area permanently. A ritual annually renewed can be foreseen, with the legend retold year by year with presumably slight variations. The actual truth would be entrusted exclusively to what we might call, for dramatic emphasis, an Atomic Priesthood. That is, a commission of knowledgeable physicists, experts in radiation sickness, anthropologists, linguists, psychologists, semioticians, and whatever additional expertise may be called for now and in the future." The Sandia Report. In 1993, Sandia National Laboratories, SNL, convened an expert panel to look at the problem, specifically for the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, WIP, located in southeastern New Mexico. The Sandia Report was produced by two teams. A lot of the focus on Team A was on building imposing architectural features, hoping that the feeling of awe and dread that could be created by such forms was innate, something humans were born with, not learned through experience, and as such, should elicit the same feeling in a person 10,000 years in the future as they do today. The structures will be adorned with messages both in writing and in pictures, such as these faces showing horror and pain. They write, "The design of the whole site itself is to be a major source of meaning, the message that we believe can be communicated non-linguistically through the design of the whole site, using physical form as a natural language. Put into words, it would communicate something like the following. This place is a message, and part of a system of messages. Pay attention to it. Sending this message was important to us. We considered ourselves to be a powerful culture. This place is not a place of honor. No highly esteemed deed is commemorated here. Nothing valued is here. What is here was dangerous and repulsive to us. This message is a warning about danger. This danger is in a particular location. It increases towards the center. The center of danger is here, of a particular size and shape, and below us. The danger is still present in your time, as it was in ours. The danger is to the body, and it can kill. The form of the danger is an emanation of energy. danger is unleashed only if you substantially disturb this place physically. This place is best shunned and left uninhabited. Some of the suggestions for designs were menacing earthworks, immense lightning-shaped earthworks radiating out of an open-centered keep, black hole, a masonry slab either of black basalt rock or black dyed concrete, an image of an enormous black hole, an immense nothing, a void. Its blackness absorbs the desert's high sun heat load and radiates it back. Rubble landscape, an enormous landscape of large stone rubble, one that is very inhospitable, being hard to walk on and difficult to bring machinery onto. Forbidding rocks, large concrete stone blocks, dyed black, set in a grid with 5-foot wide streets running both ways. You can get in it, but the streets lead nowhere, and they are too narrow to live in or to farm in or even meet in. Landscape of thorns. Danger seems to emanate from below and out of the keep in the form of stone spikes. Some members of Team B write about creating something like a wonder of the world at the site, stating, an oral tradition tethered to the marker system could emphasize that it was designed to be the world's longest lasting human artifact, that it was intended as a gift to guard the health of future generations. Though at least one member of Team B dissented, writing, as a professional artist, I wish to register a dissenting view. I believe that the marker should be designed purely on functional grounds, and that any attempts to make the marker seem some kind of artistic statement are bound to confuse the clarity of the basic message we are trying to convey. Even if we could commission some monument great enough to become a wonder of the world whose fame would be carried down 300 generations, the very fact that the marker was so impressive could lead to the belief that the purpose of the marker is artistic rather than communicative. A large and powerful sculpture sitting in the middle of the desert could easily be seen as the product of some individual artist, similar to Mount Rushmore or current endeavors like Charlie Ross's Star Axis, also under construction in New Mexico, rather than as an organized attempt at communication. Some of these large-scale artworks may also survive millennia. The WIPP marker shouldn't be mistaken for another example, however well designed, of a 20th century school of outdoor sculpture. We want people to stay away from this site, not travel from distant places to see it. A great and famous work of art encourages visits from other artists, historians and tourists. If enough people want to come to see a remote wonder, somebody will put up a hotel to accommodate them. Maybe the hotel decides to drill for water. By creating a great monument, we may be causing the development of the site that we most want to avoid. Ray cats. In their essay on the subject, semioticians Paolo Fabri and Francois Bastide suggested, among other ideas, the concept of creating a living radiation detector. First, they note that there are already examples of exposure to radiation causing effects on the skin. They write, in xeroderma pigmentosum, due to genetic defects in the DNA repair mechanisms, the skin becomes covered with spots and marks upon exposure to radiation. This is merely an example of sensitivity that could be transferred to other animal species. Their idea was to take the skin effect and tweak it. Perhaps scientists could make it so your skin doesn't just get spots and marks near radiation, but actually glows. But their plan wasn't to give the ability to humans. They planned to make another creature the detector. Cats. They write, if the detector was a pleasant, undemanding, and friendly animal, such as a cat, valued as a companion by the ancient Egyptians, it is likely that the offspring of a species could persist for millennia. The species should be given a carefully chosen name that is both evocative and enigmatic. It should arouse the curiosity of new generations. For example, Raycat could convey the animal's detector abilities. Once the detector has proven its effectiveness in the near future, its use will remain in the collective memory through spontaneously arising proverbs, fairy tales, stories, or myths. A collection of folktales could be prepared. So yeah, basically their idea was glowing cats, bolstered with proverbs and myths. Basically hoping people would derive sayings such as, when the cat starts to glow, you know that it's time to go. Many other interesting and bizarre ideas have been proposed to solve the problem, but unfortunately, and perhaps unsurprisingly, none of these ideas have actually been attempted yet. The WIPP, for which the Sandia Report was written, has not actually even been closed up yet, and an accident in 2014 where radioactive materials leaked from a damaged storage drum has some questioning if we really have figured out the first part in all this. Never mind letting people know what we've done. Are we sure that we actually can safely bury nuclear waste? The waste isolation pilot plant was originally scheduled to close in 2024, but now it's expected to remain open until at least 2050. So maybe we'll start thinking about this problem again at some point in the future. And whilst the purpose of the WIPP was to house defence-related nuclear waste, another site, the Yucca Mountain Nuclear Waste Repository, was supposed to house commercial and high-level waste. However, funding for this site was ended in 2011 over safety concerns. This leaves the United States government without any designated long-term storage for their high-level radioactive waste. Meanwhile, in Finland, their spent nuclear repository, named Onkalo, which means hiding place in Finnish, is scheduled to become operational this or next year. But they've decided to take a very different approach in marking its location. After operating for the next 100 years or so, they plan to seal it up, bury the site, and let nature take it over. In a few hundred years, the forest will grow back over the area, and then will come the glaciers. At that point, there will be nothing on the surface to point at what lies beneath. The thinking is, leaving no mark at all in the middle of nowhere is the best way to not get anyone to dig there. Let's hope they're right. In Robert McFarlane's book Underland, he went to explore Onkalo and quotes Pasi Dehima, someone who works at Onkalo, as saying, "There was a joke among the designers and engineers at Onkalo during the early years of its construction," says Pasi abruptly, rapping the stone with his knuckles, "that, as they began drilling and blasting, the first thing they would uncover would be a copper canister containing spent fuel rods." I can understand the thinking about leaving no trace. A warning message will always be something of a signpost. Putting aside for a moment the question of whether or not a warning sign will actually be understood, there is always the possibility that it might well be understood and just not taken seriously. Ultimately, I wonder if our human nature dooms us in this matter. Does our hubris make us believe that no matter what message is left to us from the past, that it's not something we have to worry about today? When comparing ourselves to our ancestors, will we always think of ourselves as people of the future and more advanced, with no need to listen to the superstitious warnings of peoples from thousands of years ago? I can't help but think of this Business Insider article. Thousands of years ago, ancient Egyptians were laid to rest in Saqqara, an ancient city of the dead. Priests placed them inside wooden boxes adorned with hieroglyphics, and the sarcophagi were sealed and buried in tombs scattered above and below the sand. According to experts, some of the Saqqari tombs have colourful curses inscribed on the walls to warn away intruders. Salima Ikram, an Egyptologist at the American University in Cairo, told Business Insider in an email that the inscribed warnings in human tombs mostly serve to deter trespassers intent on desecrating the mummies' resting places. They generally state that if the tomb is entered by an impure person, probably in body and or intention, then may the council of the gods punish the trespasser and wring his or her neck like that of a goose, she wrote. Against the instructions found in these tombs, some of the 160 coffins found have since been disturbed, opened in front of the world's media. And the plan is to remove some coffins from where they were found underground and disperse them across museums. I just say that because it's an interesting example which is relevant to this whole subject, I think, and proves the fact that just because a warning or plea from the past can be understood, it doesn't mean it will be heeded. This whole subject of communicating with someone who perhaps shares no frame of reference to you, linguistically, artistically, anything really, got me thinking about SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. How currently we can only rely on best guesses about how best to communicate with potential alien life. How we have to make assumptions about how non-Earth life might try to communicate with us before searching for those communications. And how that feels like, without a bit of luck or some new information, it's always going to be somewhat of a literal shot in the dark. Think about the images we carved on the Pioneer plaque, Earth's first intergalactic emissary, adorned with images about us that we hope an alien being might understand. But what if the life force that comes across it never needed to evolve eyes, thus rendering those images undetectable to it? The nuclear waste markings conversation we've been having in this video focuses on how to make messages that will be understood by an unknown reader. SETI has to take that question and add further complexity to it. It's not just a question of will your message be understood, will it even be noticed? will it even be seen as a message? And of course, that's just me looking at this as the sender of the message. It's also interesting to place yourself in the shoes of the people receiving the message. Because I think if we're honest with ourselves, if one day we happen to stumble across a message in the stars that's been left for us to find, and somehow manage to decipher it, and when we do so, we find that it's not a greeting, but a warning, a transmitted sentiment of, do not come here, this place is dangerous. Do we really think we'd listen to that advice? Or would the temptation to know more about the being sending the message stop us from heeding its warning? So yeah, thanks very much for watching. If you found this video interesting, I'd very much appreciate you liking and subscribing. And if by any chance you can think of the solution to the problem we've talked about today, feel free to comment it below. But for now, that's everything I got for you today. Bye folks.